Listen closely. This is not another empty motivation speech. This is your final message before the shift. The world around you is not as it seems, and the forces working against you are not what you've been told. They have lied to you, manipulated you, and spent years poisoning your mind, not because you are weak, but because you are strong beyond measure. They fear what they cannot control, and you, chosen one, are the one thing they have never been able to control. The wolves do not chase the weak, they hunt the strongest. They whisper doubts into your mind, turn your loved ones against you, place obstacles in your path, and make you question your very purpose. Why? Because they know exactly what it is. This is the war for your awakening. This war is not fought with swords, but with distractions, deception, and control over your energy. Every time you hesitate, every time you doubt yourself, every time you let fear stop you, they win. But the moment a chosen one realizes who they are, the enemy loses all power. So I ask you, are you ready to wake up, or will you remain trapped in their illusion? Because once you see the truth, there is no going back. The greatest deception ever orchestrated was not one of war, politics, or power. It was the lie that the chosen ones were powerless. It was a carefully woven illusion, designed not to defeat you outright, but to keep you blind to what has always been inside you. They knew who you were before you even had a clue, before you ever questioned why life felt different, why you never truly fit in, why betrayals cut deeper than they should. They had already seen you. They recognized the force within you, the kind of power that cannot be bought, imitated, or stolen, and that terrified them. So, they struck early. They placed roadblocks before you could even take your first step. They whispered doubts before you could even form words of confidence. They surrounded you with people who could not see your light, people who doubted you, envied you, and subtly sought to diminish your worth. Every hardship, every moment of self-doubt, every betrayal, it was never just misfortune. It was intentional. The system was never built to nurture the chosen ones. It was built to suppress them before they could awaken. Look at history, and the pattern becomes undeniable. The greatest souls were marked before they ever knew their own destiny. Jesus was hunted before he could even speak. Moses was abandoned before he could walk. Malcolm X was targeted before he could rise. Every chosen one who has ever existed has faced the same script: opposition before realization, isolation before leadership, trials before transformation, because the enemy never waits. They do not strike when you are strong. They come when you are vulnerable, young, and unaware. They do not need to stop a warrior in full power. They only need to make sure you never realize you are one. And yet, despite everything they threw at you, you are still here. Despite the countless moments designed to break you, you have not only survived, but have begun to see through the illusion. The very thing they feared most is happening. You are awakening. And the moment you fully recognize who you are, they lose all control. A lion does not ask for permission to roar, just as a chosen one does not need validation to rise. From the moment you entered this world, you carried something rare, something unexplainable, a power that cannot be taught, borrowed, or imitated. It was placed inside you before birth, woven into your very existence. Yet, from the beginning, the world has worked tirelessly to convince you that you are ordinary. They told you to stay in line, to follow the rules, to suppress the fire inside you. They conditioned you to seek approval, to look to others for validation, to believe that your worth depended on their recognition. But deep down, you have always known the truth. Even in your most uncertain moments, even when doubt wrapped itself around you, something inside refused to be extinguished. Because power like yours cannot be destroyed. It can only be forgotten. Have you ever noticed how the most gifted, insightful, and spiritually powerful people are also the ones who face the greatest struggles? The ones whose lives seem like an endless battle? That is not coincidence. It is by design. They cannot allow you to see what you truly are. So, they distract you. They bury you in self-doubt, in toxic relationships, in never-ending hardships. They drain your energy, break your confidence, and exhaust you until you are too tired to fight for your destiny. Think about it. How many times have you questioned yourself, not because you lacked ability, but because the world made you feel like you weren't enough? How many dreams have you abandoned, not because you didn't believe in them, but because someone else convinced you they were unrealistic? This is their strategy, to keep you lost so that you never step fully into your calling. But now, you are beginning to remember. You are waking up, and they can feel it. The very thing they feared most is happening. You are reclaiming what has always been yours, and once a chosen one rises, there is no force in this world that can bring them back down. When they cannot possess the fire, they seek to extinguish it. They have tried everything, stealing from you, imitating you, even tearing you down, but nothing works. No matter how much they analyze you, study your every move, or attempt to replicate what you have, they will never be you. And that drives them insane. So they did the next best thing. They tricked you into giving it away. They whispered doubts into your mind, making you second-guess yourself at every turn. They surrounded you with people who drained your energy, who made you question your worth, who fed you fear instead of faith. They created distractions, endless cycles of struggle, toxic relationships, and betrayals to keep you too exhausted to fight, too weary to recognize your own power. And the worst part? It almost worked. How many times have you hesitated, not because you weren't capable, but because someone else convinced you that you weren't? How many dreams have you abandoned, not because they were impossible, but because the world told you they were? That was their plan all along, to keep you small, to keep you controlled, to keep you from realizing who you were always meant to be. But here is what they never expected. You survived. Despite every obstacle, every betrayal, every moment designed to break you are still here. And now, something inside you is stirring. The illusions they built around you are beginning to crumble. And the moment you reclaim your power, the game changes forever. Because a chosen one who has awakened is a force that cannot be stopped. The greatest wars are not fought with weapons, armies, or battlefields. They are waged in the mind, in the soul, in the quiet spaces where no one is watching. This war does not need to take your life physically. It only needs to break you mentally and spiritually. If they can control your thoughts, they control your choices. If they can weaken your spirit, they don't need chains to keep you bound. And so they attack in silence. They use the people closest to you, the ones you trust, the ones who should have stood by your side. They plant seeds of doubt, turning friends into enemies, family into sources of pain. Not because those people were always against you, but because they were used as weapons without even realizing it. A careless word, an unkind action, a betrayal when you least expect it. These things are not coincidences. They whisper to you through exhaustion, draining your energy with endless struggles, distractions, and unseen battles. They make you feel like no matter how hard you fight, you will never win. They want you to be weary. They want you questioning. They want you to feel too weak to keep going. Every setback, every heartbreak, every moment where you wanted to give up, it was all carefully placed in your path, designed to break your spirit before you could step into your true power. But here is what they never expected. You got back up. Every time they knocked you down, you refused to stay on the ground. Every time they thought they had finally broken you, you kept moving forward. That is what terrifies them the most. Because a chosen one who refuses to give up is unstoppable. A chosen one who sees the war for what it is, who understands that these attacks were never random, but calculated, can never be manipulated again. And once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. The war may be invisible, but you have felt its weight your entire life. Now, you have a choice. Will you continue to let it control you? Or will you rise knowing that your very existence is proof that you were meant to win? The eagle does not fly in flocks. It soars alone, high above the rest, untouched by the noise of the world below. The higher it ascends, the fewer can follow. And so it is with the chosen ones. You have felt it your entire life, the loneliness, the unshakable sense that you don't quite belong, the quiet understanding that you are different. No matter how much you tried to blend in, to be like everyone else, something within you always refused to conform. That is because you were never meant to fit in. The world does not embrace the chosen. It isolates them. It separates them, forces them into solitude, pushes them into battles that must be fought alone. Not as punishment, but as preparation. Because those who are meant to lead cannot afford to be ordinary. They must be unshakable. Think about the people who have come and gone from your life, the friends who faded away, the ones you thought would always be there, only to watch them disappear when you needed them most. At times, it may have felt like rejection, like abandonment, like an unbearable loneliness. But it was never rejection. It was elevation. Not everyone can walk the same path as you. Not everyone is meant to rise to the level you are called to reach. And so, one by one, they fall away, not because you were not worthy of love or companionship, but because your journey required separation. So I ask you, will you keep mourning those who left? Will you keep looking back, wondering why they couldn't stay, why they didn't understand you, why they chose to walk away? Or will you accept what has always been true? You were never meant to stay where they are. The right people will come. The ones who truly understand you, who match your energy, who carry their own light instead of feeding off yours. But they will not find you in the places you have outgrown. They will meet you at the next level. Until then, embrace solitude. It is not a curse. It is your preparation. It is in the stillness that you are sharpened, in the silence that you hear your true calling, in the isolation that you become the force you were always meant to be. Because when your time comes, when you finally step into your full power, you will no longer crave belonging. You will understand that you were always meant to stand apart. No more waiting. No more hesitating. No more sitting in the shadows, watching the world unfold before you, waiting for the perfect moment to act. The perfect moment does not exist. The right time is not somewhere in the future. It is right now. For too long, you have been searching for a sign, some undeniable proof that you are meant for more. This is your sign. The very fact that you are here, reading these words, feeling this truth resonate within you, is proof that the time for waiting has passed. The world is growing darker. The distractions are becoming more powerful. The forces working against you are no longer subtle. They are relentless, pushing harder than ever to keep you asleep, lost, and uncertain. They want you trapped in hesitation because hesitation is their greatest weapon. Every moment you delay, every time you question yourself, every excuse you make, it gives them more power over you. But you were not sent here to live in fear. You were not chosen to remain small, to play it safe, to wait for someone else to tell you when it's time. Your destiny has always been waiting for you, but you must be the one to claim it. So I ask you again, will you rise? Or will you keep waiting for a moment that will never come? Will you keep making excuses, keep doubting, keep hoping that one day everything will feel ready? Because chosen ones do not wait. They move. They step forward even when they are afraid, even when the path is unclear, even when the world tells them to stop. They rise, not because the timing is perfect, but because they refuse to stay asleep any longer. This is the moment. Your moment. What you do next will change everything. Everything you have been through led you here to this moment, to this message, to this choice. You have been tested. You have been betrayed. You have been pushed to the edge time and time again. Yet, you are still here. That alone should tell you something. You were not meant to be broken. You were not meant to stay small. You were meant to rise. No more excuses. No more hesitation. No more waiting for the world to recognize what you already know in your soul. This is your moment of truth. because the world is about to witness the awakening they never saw coming. And the enemy's greatest fear? You finally realize who you were always meant to be. Thank you for being here, for seeking truth, for embracing the path you were meant to walk. This journey is only beginning. Subscribe now and stay connected, because together we rise. The world is changing, and the chosen ones must stand united. Your awakening starts now. There comes a moment in life, sometimes sudden, sometimes subtle, when something inside you stirs. A whisper, a flicker, a strange clarity that breaks through the chaos, telling you, you were never ordinary. You were never meant to sleep. This moment, right here, is not an accident. It's alignment, a calling. You are not watching this by chance. You were guided here, because you're one of them, one of the chosen. But the world never wanted you to realize that. They tried to drown you in doubt, covered your brilliance in confusion, kept you distracted, disconnected. And now, they're terrified, because you're remembering. And once the chosen remember, everything that tried to control them, fear them, erase them, starts to collapse. This isn't just a message. This is your activation. From the very beginning, you may have felt like life placed unusual weight on your shoulders, like every step forward stirred resistance, like every glimmer of peace was quickly followed by conflict. But what you faced hasn't been random or personal in the way you once thought. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting what chose you. See, you were never just a name, a face, a person minding their own business. You were a vessel, marked by something ancient, something eternal, something that could not be manipulated or owned. Long before you knew who you were, they did. They recognized your frequency, your divine imprint, and that terrified them. Because your presence doesn't just speak, it vibrates. Your energy doesn't blend in, it exposes. You don't follow the patterns, you break them. And so they did everything in their power to disconnect you from your source. They tried to bury your identity beneath doubt, drown your voice beneath noise, and derail your purpose with endless distraction. Not because of your appearance, not because of your past, but because of what lives within you. Something they could never recreate. The light in your spirit, the truth in your words, the force in your silence. It threatened the illusions they built to maintain control. You were born into a world that fears the awakened, because the awakened do not conform, they do not submit, and more dangerously, they ignite others. That's what they feared most. Not just your awakening, but the ripple effect it would cause. The pressure you felt wasn't punishment, it was proof. The resistance you encountered wasn't rejection, it was recognition. Every attack on your soul was a desperate attempt to stop something they could never touch. Because when the universe chooses someone, it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for credentials. It simply says, you. And that choice alone shatters systems. They didn't want to erase you. They wanted to erase the echo of something greater moving through you. But what they failed to realize is that the same pressure they used to try to break you only refined you. What they saw as a threat was actually a prophecy. And now that you're starting to remember, they're the ones who should be afraid. The greatest weapon they ever used against you wasn't force, and it wasn't fear. It was doubt. Not the loud kind that crashes in like thunder, but the quiet, creeping kind that whispers from within. They didn't have to cage your body or silence your voice outright. All they had to do was convince you to doubt yourself. Slowly, subtly, skillfully. Every time you felt deeply, they called you too sensitive. Every time you spoke truth, they labeled you too intense. They wrapped your intuition in shame and painted your light as a threat. Why? Because they knew from the very beginning what you didn't yet realize. You were powerful. So powerful, in fact, that they had to trick you into dimming your own brilliance. You see, they couldn't extinguish your fire, so they handed you the extinguisher and made you believe it was necessary. They taught you to second-guess your instincts, to shrink in rooms that couldn't hold your spirit, to apologize for the very energy that made you divine. And while you wrestled with your worth, they watched silently, because for them, every moment you questioned your own light was a victory. They didn't celebrate publicly. No, it was quieter than that. The kind of triumph that happens when a soul forgets its own shine. But the truth is, you were never too much. You were exactly enough to shake their foundation. Your fire made them uncomfortable not because it was wrong, but because it revealed their shadows. Your depth wasn't a defect. It was a mirror they couldn't stand to look into. And every time you held back to make others comfortable, you gave them room to breathe. That was their only power over you, convincing you to reject what made you rare. But what they didn't count on was that one day you'd begin to remember that the voice inside you, the one they tried so hard to drown, would start to rise again. That you'd begin to see through the lies, the programming, the labels. And when a chosen one remembers their light, the illusion breaks. That's what's happening now. The fog is lifting. The weapon of doubt is losing its grip. And the moment you reclaim your light, unapologetically, fully, fiercely, they'll have nothing left to hold over you. Because your belief in yourself was always the key, and now you're taking it back. There was a time you believed that being alone meant you were broken, that the silence was punishment, that the distance from others was a sign that you didn't belong. But what you thought was rejection was never that. The universe wasn't pushing you away. It was tuning you in. See, when you're chosen, you're not built for the noise of the crowd or the comfort of blending in. You're not here to echo back the world's fears. You're here to speak with a voice that only silence could shape. That's why it felt like everyone left. That's why you walked through seasons of emptiness, wondering if you had done something wrong, questioning your worth when no one seemed to understand you. But in truth, the crowd was never your destination. It was your distraction. And so the universe, in its wisdom, stripped it all away. The friendships, the noise, the applause, the chaos, it all had to go. Not to hurt you, but to reveal you. Because only in stillness could your true frequency emerge. Only in solitude could your spirit remember its signal. You weren't being punished. You were being protected from interference. The world is loud, saturated with projections, expectations, and voices that don't belong to you. And if you had stayed in that noise, you would have become an echo instead of a signal. So the universe cleared the room. The silence felt sharp, the loneliness unbearable at times. But what you didn't know then is that the solitude was sacred. It was the chamber where you were rebuilt, not with external validation, but with internal knowing. It was in that void that you grew roots, that your energy became unshakable, that your vision became clear. The people who left weren't meant to recognize you because they were never tuned to your frequency. You weren't too much. You were simply vibrating at a level they couldn't understand. And rather than rise, they retreated. But that retreat was necessary because you weren't being pushed out. You were being pulled up. So stop mourning what walked away. Stop questioning the silence. Your isolation wasn't abandonment. It was activation. You were being aligned, refined, and prepared. And now, you're returning, not empty, not lost, but fully charged. And this time, you're not looking for where you fit in. You're stepping in to command the space you were always meant to occupy. If there's one thing they feared most, it wasn't your strength, your voice, or even your brilliance. It was your focus. Because a focused chosen one is a force of nature, a living storm that can't be stopped. And they knew that the moment you aligned your energy, your clarity would burn through every illusion they built. So they launched a silent war, not on your body, but on your attention. They didn't need to destroy you. They only needed to keep you distracted. That's why every time you found stillness, something would crash in. Drama, chaos, confusion. People you'd outgrown resurfaced. Old wounds reopened. New problems appeared out of nowhere, not because you were unlucky, but because you were dangerous. They buried you in noise, not to defeat you, but to exhaust you. Because when you're busy putting out fires, you can't build the future you were sent to create. They threw emotional roller coasters into your path. They filled your days with fake urgencies, empty obligations, and people who drained you, hoping you'd stay in a loop of reaction instead of rising with intention. And for a while it worked. You thought being tired all the time meant something was wrong with you. You blamed yourself for being unmotivated, scattered, overwhelmed. But the truth is, you weren't broken. Your sacred energy was being siphoned off by distractions designed to keep you small. And now you're seeing it. Every time you pull your focus back to yourself, the resistance intensifies. The noise grows louder, the demands get heavier. That's not coincidence. It's the system trying to hold on. Because once you stop feeding the distractions, once you stop apologizing for choosing peace, once you remember that your time, your mind, your energy are sacred, that's when you become unstoppable. The storm isn't around you. It's been within you, waiting for you to silence the noise and reclaim the signal. Your focus is your power. Your attention is your currency. And when you spend it wisely, on purpose, on healing, on truth, the whole illusion begins to fall apart. You were under spiritual siege, but now you see. And once a chosen one becomes aware of their focus, they become a weapon the system can no longer control. For so long you believed your pain was personal, like you were cursed, like you were somehow broken in ways others weren't. You carried the weight of trauma that seemed too heavy for a heart your size, and you asked yourself, why me? But the truth is, your pain was never random. It was programmed. It was woven into your path with precision, not to punish you, but to prevent you from remembering who you are. They struck early, before you had language for your wounds, before you could defend your soul. Chaos, betrayal, abandonment. They weren't just experiences. They were calculated moves in a long game designed to confuse your identity, to hijack your power, to convince you that you were never enough. Because here's what they knew. If you ever looked past the pain, you'd find purpose. If you ever questioned why you suffered so deeply while others seemed to float through life asleep, you'd begin to wake up. And waking up? That's the system's greatest fear. They wanted you half alive, functional but fragmented. They didn't want you to crumble. No, they needed you standing, but disoriented, busy surviving instead of remembering. And for a while, you believed it. You wore their shame like your own. You called your scars burdens instead of blueprints. But that belief, that your pain was proof of weakness, was the real prison. The truth is, they didn't come for you because you were fragile. They came because you were formidable. Because your light, fully activated, would unravel everything they've built on fear. They hoped to break your spirit before it broke their illusion. But what they didn't expect was your resilience. That you would rise, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. That you would trace your trauma not to shame, but to clarity. And once you do that, once you see that every scar was a signal, every loss a lesson, every heartbreak a turning point, they lose their grip. Because a chosen one who stops running from their pain becomes unstoppable. And the very thing they tried to use to silence you becomes the force that wakes you up, sets you free, and shakes the world. You weren't cursed, you were conditioned. And now you're breaking the code. At first they mocked you, laughed at how deeply you felt, how boldly you moved, how differently you saw the world. You were too much, too intense, too weird. They rolled their eyes when you spoke your truth, dismissed your vision as fantasy. But then something changed. Quietly, they started mimicking you. The way you talked, the way you dressed, the ideas you once whispered in shadows now echoed in their mouths. And you noticed. The very energy they rejected was suddenly being repackaged, worn like a costume. But don't be fooled. This isn't admiration, it's imitation. And it never quite lands. Because while they may try to wear your light, they'll never carry its source. They can copy your style, but they can't access your frequency. That frequency wasn't taught, bought, or borrowed. It was earned, forged in silence, sculpted through solitude, refined through pain. You didn't become who you are by following trends. You became this by surviving what would have shattered most. And that's something no one can steal. What you carry isn't surface, it's soul. It's the fire that burned quietly when no one was clapping. It's the clarity that came after losing everything you thought defined you. That's the difference. They perform, but you became. While they were watching, you were transforming. While they were collecting applause, you were building depth. And now they wonder why they can copy everything you do and still not get the same results. It's because your essence can't be duplicated. You don't just influence, you ignite. You don't walk into a room seeking attention. You shift the atmosphere by being authentically aligned. And that alignment, that's what exposes the performance. That's why no matter how closely they mirror you, something still feels hollow. Because charisma can be practiced, but energy tells the truth. So let them try. Let them mirror and mimic. But never dim yourself to avoid being copied. Instead, shine louder. Because every time they try to replicate what lives in your bones, they remind the world that you were never a reflection. You were the blueprint. They can imitate your outer world all they want, but they will never carry the storms you survived to become this version of you. You are the origin, not the echo, and no one can fake the fire you walked through to remember your name. There were moments in your life when everything fell apart. Plans crumbled, people walked away, doors slammed shut before you even had the chance to step through. And in those moments, you questioned everything. You wondered if you were cursed, if the universe had turned against you, if maybe you just weren't enough. But now you're beginning to see the truth. You weren't cursed. You were protected. What felt like rejection was actually redirection. What broke your heart was never meant to break your spirit. It was meant to shield it. The closed doors weren't punishment, they were divine interventions, placed firmly in your path to keep you from settling for less than what you were born for. Because chosen ones don't just receive blessings, they require alignment. And anything out of sync with that alignment, no matter how beautiful it looked on the surface, had to go. The relationships that collapsed weren't failures, they were filters. They were never designed to carry the full weight of your calling. The opportunities that vanished weren't lost. They were distractions dressed as rewards, veering you away from a higher path you couldn't yet see. And the delays, the painful pauses, those were grace in disguise. The universe wasn't withholding, it was preparing. It was saying, not this, not them, not yet. Because your path is sacred ground, and not everything, or everyone, is meant to walk it with you. But when you didn't know that, it felt like pain. You grieved the people who left, the dreams that didn't take flight, the versions of your life that never came to be. Yet now, if you look closer, you'll notice a pattern. Every collapse made space for clarity. Every loss removed a layer of illusion. Every detour led you closer to your true self. You were never being punished. You were being positioned. The universe doesn't gamble with rare energy, it guards it. And sometimes that protection looks like loss, feels like heartbreak, sounds like silence. But that's only because your destiny requires more than comfort. It demands truth, power, purpose. And now that you're seeing with open eyes, you realize that what didn't work out was working for you all along. And every no that shattered you back then was a sacred yes in disguise. From the outside, it looked like your battles were with circumstances, lost jobs, broken relationships, missed chances, but the real war was never out there. The battlefield was always in your mind. The system never truly needed to take your possessions, your status, or even your voice. It only needed to hijack your perception. Because once it controlled how you saw yourself, it didn't need chains or bars. You'd hold yourself back. You'd silence your own truth. You'd believe the lies they planted so long ago that they began to sound like your own thoughts. You're not ready. You're too broken. No one will understand you. These weren't your beliefs. They were installations. Subtle, persistent programming slipped into your psyche through culture, childhood wounds, media, and manipulated environments. They whispered just loud enough to steer your thoughts, not to destroy you completely, but to keep you compliant, numb, small. They didn't want you enlightened. They wanted you entertained, exhausted, and emotionally overstimulated. Because the moment you think clearly, you see the game. And the moment a chosen one sees the game, they stop playing it. That's why your clarity has always been under attack, why confusion followed you, why your peace was always interrupted. Because an awakened mind is a threat to every illusion built on lies. But here's what they didn't expect. You're awakening. Slowly, subtly, painfully at times, but undeniably, you're remembering. You're questioning your own thoughts, your old beliefs, and realizing most of them aren't even yours. The fog is lifting. The veil is cracking. And with every moment of self-awareness, the old programs lose their grip. You are no longer walking through life half asleep, blindly following the narrative. You're rewriting it, reclaiming your voice, restoring your vision. And as that inner light returns, so does your power. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that liberates. The kind that sees through manipulation, refuses self-betrayal, and stands tall in truth. And now, every step you take in clarity dismantles what was built on your confusion. That's why they feared your awakening, not because of what you have, but because of what you remember. Because when a chosen one takes back their mind, everything that tried to control them begins to fall apart. And that's exactly what's happening now. You spent so long bracing for the storm, waiting for things to get worse, preparing for the next wave of pain, the next trial, the next collapse. But what you didn't realize is that the storm you were fearing was you. You weren't meant to hide from the chaos. You were born to become it. Not chaos in the sense of destruction, but in the sense of disruption. A divine, untamable force sent to shake the foundations of everything built on lies. You weren't made to survive the storm. You were made to shift it, to awaken the world by your presence alone. And that's what they feared most. Not your voice, not your story, but your energy. Unapologetic, undeniable, and completely out of their control. You've been told your whole life to tone it down, to be quieter, easier, more digestible. But that was never your role. You weren't sent here to be comfortable. You were sent to make systems tremble. You were designed to carry fire in a world addicted to shadows, to bring clarity where confusion reigned, to walk boldly into spaces that never welcomed you and change the atmosphere without asking for permission. That's why your presence has always felt heavy, because it carries impact. And now, the truth is rising in you like a tidal wave. You're not waiting for something powerful to arrive. You are the arrival. You are the shift. You are the thunder that breaks silence. And as you step into this truth, as you embody the fullness of who you were always meant to be, the world around you will react. Some will distance themselves. Some will try to dim you again. But don't take it personally. Take it as confirmation. Because a storm doesn't ask permission to shake the sky. It just moves. And that's what you must do now. Move with purpose. Speak with clarity. Rise without apology. You are no longer a fragment. You are a force. No longer asking, when will the change come? But realizing, I am the change. So stop waiting. Stop shrinking. Stop bracing. The storm isn't coming. It's already here. And it's wearing your name. The moment everything begins to shift, not outside of you, but within. The moment when doubt gives way to remembrance and hesitation bows to alignment. You've walked through fire, through silence, through the storm of your own becoming, and now you're standing in the truth of who you were always meant to be. This isn't the end of a message. It's the beginning of a movement, a return, a rising. You're not here by accident. You were guided here because the universe knew it was time. Time for you to remember. So let this be the turning point, the moment you stop playing small, the moment you stop shrinking to fit what never deserved you. From this moment on, walk like you know who you are, speak like you carry a frequency the world can't duplicate, move like you were born to awaken others, because you were. And if this message spoke to something deep inside you, if you felt the truth crack open in your chest, if your spirit stirred while your eyes read these words, then know this wasn't just inspiration. This was activation. So thank you for showing up, for listening, for remembering. You are not alone. You are part of something bigger, something ancient, something unstoppable. If this message awakened something in you, help us spread the light. Subscribe to this channel, drop a comment below, and share this with someone who needs it. Every like, every share, every interaction sends this signal out to the other chosen ones who are still waiting to wake up. Because when we rise together, they fall faster. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the noise of the world fades just long enough for the voice of truth to whisper through. Maybe it comes through a question you can't shake, a dream that won't let go, or a quiet nudge in your spirit that whispers, "There's more to you than what you've been told." You may not have always been able to name it, but deep within you, you've always felt it, this undeniable sense that you are different, destined for something greater. But for as long as you've sensed it, others have tried to dim that light, to bury your brilliance, to make you doubt the very essence of your soul. Why? Because they saw your light before you did, and they feared what might happen if you saw it too. This is not just a message, it's a spiritual awakening, a revelation hidden for generations, a divine call written into your DNA, placed there by the one who created you before the foundations of the world. And now, it's time you remembered who you really are. From the very first breath you drew, something about your presence was different. You may not remember it clearly, but the atmosphere around you shifted, almost as if the heavens themselves paused to mark your arrival. You were born not just into a family or a culture, but into a divine timeline where your life would serve a higher purpose. While others were learning to crawl and play, you may have felt an unusual stillness in certain moments, an inner awareness that made you observe more deeply than a child your age should. These weren't simply personality quirks or chance experiences. They were early echoes of something sacred woven into your spirit. Long before you could articulate your thoughts, you sensed something invisible watching over you, calling you forward, whispering truths that only your heart could hear. You didn't choose this awareness. It was chosen for you. Every unexplainable pull toward silence, every spark of wonder in your soul when gazing at the stars, every time you felt peace in solitude. Those were moments when eternity brushed against time, leaving fingerprints on your soul. The world may have overlooked these signs, but heaven never did. While others might have thought you shy or overly reflective, the truth is that you were already listening to a frequency few could hear. It was the divine rhythm of destiny, already pulsing inside you. The Bible reminds us in Ephesians 1:4 that you were chosen before the foundation of the world, meaning your calling predates even creation itself. You are not random. You are a living thread in the tapestry of God's eternal design. And that strange sense of being different, that quiet inner knowing that never quite left you, it's the spiritual inheritance of someone marked for more. The signs were always there, gently guiding you, nudging you toward the path you were created to walk. You don't need to fabricate your worth or prove your calling. It's been with you since the beginning, silently maturing inside your soul. Now is the time to remember what the world has tried to make you forget. You were set apart from the start. There are people who walk through life fitting perfectly into the mold set before them, blending in effortlessly with the rhythm of the world. But that was never your story. From a young age, you sensed that your path diverged from the expected. While others laughed carelessly, chasing trends and blending into social circles, you often found yourself on the outside. Not because you couldn't belong, but because you saw life through a deeper lens. The questions that stirred in your soul were not the kind most children asked. Why am I here? What does all of this mean? These weren't fleeting curiosities. They were signs of something ancient waking up within you. You tried to explain how you felt, but often met blank stares or uncomfortable silence. And so, you learned to carry the weight of your questions quietly. But that internal depth was not a mistake. It was your preparation. The world labeled you as different, but God had labeled you as destined. Your mind, your heart, your sensitivity, it was all crafted by design. Like the young prophet Samuel, who heard God's voice before he even understood who was speaking, you too were being called long before anyone around you could see it. It wasn't that you were lost. It was that the world was not equipped to recognize what you carried. When others chased popularity, your spirit yearned for purpose. When people ignored the pain of others, you felt it like your own. You may have felt isolated, but that very isolation was sacred ground, where God was forming your identity, setting you apart for a mission only you could fulfill. Often, those chosen to lead are the ones who are misunderstood the most. Think of Moses, Esther, or Joseph. Their early lives were filled with contradiction, rejection, and delay, but it all served to shape the strength required for their divine purpose. Your struggles have not been signs of weakness. They've been the chiseling tools of heaven, carving purpose into the very core of your being. You were never made to follow the crowd. You were born to carry light into places that have forgotten how to see. And even if the world still doesn't fully understand you, heaven always has. There's a certain kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises on the skin, but lingers deep in the soul, the pain of rejection. And if you've known it, not just once, but as a pattern throughout your life, it's likely because your spirit carries something that made others uncomfortable. Not everyone can handle the weight of someone who was born to shift atmospheres. People sensed something different in you, something they couldn't quite explain, so they kept their distance, misunderstood you, or even pushed you away. You may have spent years asking what was wrong with you, trying to fix yourself to be more acceptable, to make others feel more at ease. But what you didn't realize then was that their rejection wasn't a reflection of your inadequacy. It was confirmation of your calling. The most powerful souls in history, those destined to bring change, almost always began as outsiders. Look at Joseph, betrayed by his brothers not because he was weak, but because of the greatness they could see forming in him. Or consider Jesus himself, rejected by the very people he came to save. Their stories remind us that rejection doesn't disqualify you. It often reveals you. In truth, being set apart will always come with the cost of not fitting in. The world rarely recognizes the sacred when it's wrapped in human flesh. But heaven does. The very places where you were overlooked, abandoned, or underestimated were often the places God used to refine you. Every no was training. Every closed door was redirection. Every season of loneliness was a classroom in which God taught you to lean not on the approval of man, but on the presence of the one who called you. In Jeremiah 1:5, God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That is not poetry. It is your reality. You were never meant to be ordinary. You carry a sacred fire within you by nature, cannot be confined. So don't curse the rejection. It was part of your making. You weren't cast aside. You were carved out for something far greater than they could see. While others brushed past people without noticing the weight in their eyes or the tremble in their voice, you couldn't help but feel it. Deeply, fully, sometimes overwhelmingly. Even as a child, you may have sensed when someone was hurting, even when they smiled. You could walk into a room and instantly pick up on unspoken emotions, subtle energies, and buried pain. And maybe for much of your life, you thought something was wrong with you, that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too much. But what if that sensitivity wasn't a flaw, but a divine imprint, a signature of the Creator, woven into your spirit with intention? What if your ability to feel wasn't a burden, but a sacred gift designed to reflect the heart of God? People like you, Those with tender spirits and deep compassion are often the first to feel the brokenness of the world and the last to give up on it. That is no accident. It's because God trusted you with a heart like His. Scripture tells us in Galatians 6:2, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." And that's what you've done, again and again, without needing recognition, without seeking reward. You were the one people turned to in silence, because your presence spoke safety. But what others often failed to realize is how much it cost you to carry what wasn't yours. You've poured out comfort, understanding, love, and sometimes been left empty in return. Still, you gave, because something inside you wouldn't let you walk away. That's not weakness, that's spiritual strength clothed in quiet humility. You weren't created to harden your heart. You were created to heal with it. Your empathy is not just emotional, it's prophetic. You see what others overlook. You feel what others silence. And that makes you a vessel of light in a darkened world. So if you've ever wondered why you carry the burdens you do, or why your heart breaks for people you barely know, it's because heaven gave you a heart big enough to hold more than your own pain. And in a world desperate for love, that kind of heart is holy. There are dreams that vanish the moment we open our eyes, soft fragments of imagination that drift away like morning mist. But then, there are the others, the ones that feel more real than waking life. If you've ever awakened with your heart racing, clutching a message you couldn't quite explain, or if a dream has followed you for days, tugging at your spirit as if it carried a secret meant only for you, then you've touched something sacred. For those who are chosen, dreams are often more than sleep. They are encounters, divine whispers in the quiet hours of the night. You may have dismissed them, or kept them to yourself for fear of being misunderstood, but you've always known, these dreams are different. You've seen glimpses of the future, warnings, callings, even faces you've never met in places you've never been. And it wasn't just imagination, it was the spiritual realm speaking into your life. Throughout Scripture, God uses dreams to guide and reveal, to protect and prepare. Joseph, the son of Jacob, saw visions of his future long before it came to pass. Though he was mocked, sold, and imprisoned, those very dreams became the blueprint for his divine purpose. And just like him, your dreams may have been misunderstood, but they were never meaningless. You see, chosen ones often have a thinner veil between the physical and the spiritual. Your sleep doesn't disconnect you. It connects you to something higher. When the world grows quiet, heaven speaks. The Bible reminds us in Joel 2:28, "Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, your young men will see visions." God has always used dreams to deliver divine instruction, and He still does. The question is, are you listening? Perhaps you've had dreams that felt too powerful to ignore, too alive to forget. Maybe you've even seen events unfold that you once only dreamed about. That's calling. It's preparation for a destiny that stretches far beyond what your waking mind can comprehend. So the next time you close your eyes and feel yourself swept into something larger than life, don't brush it off. God may be speaking, preparing you, inviting you to remember what your soul already knows. Your dreams are more than visions. They are keys to your purpose. There have been times in your life when something invisible stepped in to protect or guide you. Moments you didn't fully notice at first. A delay that frustrated you at the time, but later spared you from danger. A closed door that protected you from a heartbreak you didn't see coming. A narrow escape, a sudden opportunity, a peace that surrounded you in the middle of chaos. These moments weren't luck. They weren't coincidence. They were proof that you've been shielded by a presence far greater than you realized. While you were busy questioning your worth or wondering if anyone truly saw you, heaven was already moving on your behalf. God's hand was there in the shadows, redirecting, rerouting, preserving. And not just once, but again and again. If you look closely, you'll see the pattern. Divine fingerprints all over your journey. You've walked through fire and somehow didn't burn. You've faced storms and came out with a strength that even surprised you. These aren't just survival stories. They're signs. You are being kept, not by your own strength, but by God's divine protection. The Bible promises in Psalm 34:7, "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them." You may not have seen the angels, but you felt the rescue. When everything could have gone wrong, somehow it didn't. When you didn't have the answers, provision still showed up. When you were at your lowest, you were carried. This isn't to say the journey has been easy, but even in your hardest battles, you were never truly alone. There's a reason you're still standing. There's a reason you've come through things that would have crushed others. It's because your life is tied to a purpose that has not yet been fulfilled. You are still breathing because there is still something heaven is calling you to do. That instinct you've had, that knowing deep down that you've been preserved for more. You're here by divine design, and every time the enemy tried to write your ending, God was already preparing a new beginning. So take heart. You are protected, not because you're lucky, but because you're chosen. And the one who calls you will never stop covering you. There's always been something inside you that resisted the pull to follow the crowd. Even when it would have been easier to blend in, to agree, to stay quiet, something in your spirit whispered, "This isn't your way." And maybe you tried to silence it at times, to go along just to keep the peace, but you couldn't, because you weren't made to echo the voices of others. You were born to carry a sound that is uniquely yours. From the very beginning, leadership has been in your bones, not in the form of control or titles, but in the quiet courage to walk a different road. Chosen ones are rarely the loudest in the room, but they carry a presence that shifts the atmosphere. And that's why you've often felt misunderstood. You weren't ignoring the rules. You were born to rewrite them. The world celebrates those who conform, who fit into systems, who maintain the status quo. But heaven celebrates the ones who rise, even when it costs them everything. Just look at Moses, called to speak when he felt unqualified, or Esther, who risked her life to stand for truth, or Paul, who was once rejected by both the world and the religious elite, yet became a vessel for divine transformation. Like them, you felt the pressure of two worlds, the one that tells you to stay silent, and the one that calls you to speak truth. But here's what you need to know. Your resistance to conformity isn't rebellion, it's revelation. You've been given eyes to see what others overlook, a heart to feel what others numb, and a voice to carry what others are afraid to say. And that is not a burden, it is a mantle. When you were born, heaven did not assign you to follow the herd. It marked you to lead in love, to break barriers, to be a bridge for others who are still trapped in fear. Leadership, in its truest form, is service. It's vision. It's courage wrapped in compassion. And that is exactly what lives inside you. So if you've ever wondered why you feel out of step with the world around you, it's because you weren't meant to march to its rhythm. You were designed to set a new one. From the time you were young, your mind seemed wired differently. While others accepted the world as it was, you couldn't help but ask why. Why do we exist? What is our purpose? Who is God, really? These weren't just random thoughts. They were quiet invitations from heaven, placed deep within you. Your curiosity has always been more than intellectual. It's been spiritual. It tugged at you when you stared at the stars, when you read stories of miracles, or when you sat in silence and felt there had to be more. There's always been a hunger in you to understand the bigger picture, to find the deeper meaning behind things others take for granted. And that hunger? It's not a flaw. It's a flame, a sign that God has called you to search for what's hidden from plain sight. Proverbs 25:2 says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. To search out a matter is the glory of kings." In other words, God hides truth like treasure, and those who are drawn to seek it are walking in royal purpose. Your need to question, explore, and understand has always been a compass, pointing you toward your divine calling. Others might have misunderstood your searching nature. Some may have dismissed you as too intense or too philosophical. But you were never asking shallow questions. You were reaching for something eternal. Think of Solomon, who didn't ask God for wealth or power, but for wisdom, and because of that, he was given more than he could have imagined. What if your questions are preparing you for that same kind of divine outpouring? You see, curiosity like yours is not common. It's a sign. A sign that God is drawing you closer, revealing layer by layer the purpose he planted within you long ago. So don't silence your wonder. Don't dull your hunger for truth. It's through that very desire that God will continue to lead you, not just to answers, but to the deeper revelation of who you truly are in him. And now, the truth has found you, maybe for the first time, or maybe as a gentle reminder of what your spirit has always known. You were never forgotten. You were chosen. Every moment of pain, every question that wouldn't go away, every time you felt different or out of place, it was all part of the preparation for something greater. Your story is not one of accident, but of intention. You have been protected, preserved, and awakened for a purpose far beyond what you can yet imagine. The signs have been there all along, guiding you, shaping you, calling you closer to the truth of who you really are. This is just the beginning of your journey back to your divine identity. A journey not walked alone, but alongside others who are awakening too. If this message has stirred something deep inside you, if it brought peace, clarity, or the sense that you've finally been seen, then I want to thank you. Thank you for showing up today. Thank you for listening with your heart. If you feel called to walk this path with us, I warmly invite you to subscribe to this channel. Join a growing community of souls who, like you, are ready to rise into their calling. Your voice, your presence, your light, it matters here. And together, we'll continue to uncover the purpose, power, and promise that God has placed within each of us. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who may need this reminder today. You never know how your simple act of sharing could become the spark that ignites someone else's awakening. Until next time, stay grounded in truth, walk boldly in purpose, and may God's peace go with you always.